Y como veis, para presentarla contamos con la presencia de su directora. Si os parece, abrimos directamente el turno de preguntas, ya que sois bastantes, y si no, os echo una mano yo. No sé si hay alguna primera pregunta.
Yes, hello. Why are the girls Canadian?
Hi. Thank you for having me. They're American women, so in the very first scene of the movie, one of them says to the other one, we're Canadians, she says to the Norwegian backpacker. And the other American says, why Canadians? And the other girl, sorry, it's a complicated story. The other girl says, oh, everybody loves Canadians. So I think they're just pretending to be Canadians as a way to kind of get in with the people of Australia who probably have more of a closer connection to Canadians.
¿Hay alguna otra pregunta? Vale, aquí.
Hola, muchas gracias por la peli, enhorabuena. Yo quería preguntar por el tratamiento de la iluminación en la película y, bueno, y más concreta en los interiores, que ayuda muchísimo a la sensación de agobio y de turbiedad, ¿no?, que podríamos decir. ¿Cómo fue ese trabajo? Gracias.
The interior lights, was that the question? I mean, it was about, it's an interesting one. It's such a harsh, the Australian sun is a very harsh sun. So it was, when we were outside, it was very bright. And so it was about when we came inside, about kind of exploring the darkness and using that darkness and these sort of rays of light, like from, whatever windows or slits of doorways or underneath doors or whatever we could do to play with sort of for tension, to kind of create an atmosphere that was a little dark and a little tense. But everything in that movie, it's all existing. It's all supposed to be kind of building tension, ratcheting tension up. So it's about sort of subtle, both visually and sonically, we're sort of trying to create a world where you're not sure, am I safe, am I not? Is this a threat? Is this a joke? What is this type thing?
Esta chica de aquí de negro, detrás de ti. Aquí.
Congratulations, Kitty. I'm writing for Australia, so I was very curious about your amazing barfly cast, all of those actors in the bar. What was the audition process? And also, how do you think that your average Australian man will receive it? Or how would you hope they will receive it?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, the casting, we brought a lot of the main cast in from all over Australia, but the locals who were sitting at the bar, a lot of them were cast out of the state that we shot in, which we shot in South Australia in Adelaide. So we cast sort of a lot of local actors. And actually, if we found that process, when you're casting locals, you get more real characters, like they're more kind of naturally oddballs, but they're all very sweet, kind people. So it was a lovely group, really, that kind of came together. And I'll credit that some of the actors, like Dan Henschel, who plays Dolly, he took a bunch of them under his wing and took them out for a drink and kind of explained to them, made it fun and made it a good group. So that was really, it wasn't too difficult actually to find them. And the Australian men, I don't know, some of them will be mad, some of them will like it. It's an interesting film because it's there's no overt violence in it in that way. So, and I think people get a little mad because they're waiting for the violence, and when the violence doesn't come, I think they're forced to sort of look at their own behavior a little more, and that makes people a little uncomfortable. So we'll see how it goes down, but yeah.
Yo quería hacer una pregunta. You can use the translation?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sorry. Yo quería preguntarle a Kitty, tengo entendido que el origen del proyecto, que evidentemente está en perfecta sintonía con el cine que ha hecho hasta ahora, es un documental sobre el funcionamiento de un hotel en Australia. Quería saber si eso es así, que nos explicaras un poquito. Gracias.
Yeah, I was on a jury for documentary films in Australia, and I saw this documentary about two Scandinavian women who are backpacking in Australia, and they take a job in this pub to get some money, and they end up in a town very similar to the one in the film. So we used that as sort of the jumping off point or the starting point for the screenplay. We obviously, nothing is the same. There's no dialogue or anything taken from the documentary, but the kind of vibe of the place is similar. So, yeah.
¿Hay alguna pregunta?
Hola, buenos días. Me gustaría saber un poco, porque yo creo que la película intenta jugar con el cine de los años 70, darle un poquito la vuelta y ponerlo del lado de las mujeres por primera vez, ¿no? Me gustaría un poco que nos hablara de eso, de la manera de hablar de violencia machista, de sociedad patriarcal desde el entretenimiento del cine.
Yeah, I mean, I think historically, when you see an image in cinema with two young women in the middle of nowhere, an audience sort of goes into it thinking, oh, they're probably going to die, or someone's going to kill them, or something bad's going to happen to them. And we were looking at subverting that image and instead using it as something like creating a narrative about strength and about women finding themselves and figuring themselves out and some sort of rite of passage trip. So we wanted to kind of challenge all those tropes that you see in horror movies where the two, so we're playing around with genre, we're playing around with all the expectations of the audience, which again sometimes makes audiences a little mad because they almost want them to die or something creepy like that. But we've had a bit of fun with sort of horror movie tropes, but turning it into spinning it around. So it's very much sort of pro the heroes of the movie, and yeah, they champion in the end.
Hay otra pregunta aquí.
La verdad es que justo iba a preguntar sobre eso mismo, sobre el juego que hay, con que parece realmente una película de terror, que pensamos todos que va a haber sangre, despieces, etcétera, y no es así, y yo creo que es un acierto total. Entonces, yo tengo la curiosidad, a raíz de esto, de si en algún momento pensó meter algo más de, digamos, de género de terror, aunque fuera una pincelada, algo más de sangre o así, o realmente sí que fue toda la idea desde el principio, decir, no, vamos a jugar precisamente con eso, ese es el juego que quiero meter.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we've seen enough violence against women on screen and in cinema, and I was looking to make something that is specifically not that. So immediately that was the first goal when in adapting the film, is thinking, well, how can we explore this sort of behavior? It's a complicated thing to describe, but we're basically looking at the type of behavior that is kind of the gateway or entry point to sexual violence and violence against women. So it's about trying to stop that behavior from ever getting too bad or too far. So if you say no earlier on, then it never escalates. So the idea is it's about all this kind of weird sort of behavior where you're like, ooh, I'm uncomfortable, but I'm not sure. Should I stand up for myself? Should I not? And so it's about that kind of line. We're dancing on the line without ever really crossing it, I think, which was always the goal from the beginning. And then, yeah, I don't know. But again, it's really only I never said it was a horror movie. It's only an audience that thinks it's a horror movie. It's a wild thing where they look at that image and think that they're going to die. It's crazy. We're always like saying, no, they're not going to die. They don't die. Oops, I don't know if I should spoil it. I don't know. These guys are distributing it. But you know what I mean? Like, we're trying to teach people that there's a different way to make that kind of film, which is about women being strong in the outback, you know.
Aquí hay una pregunta, Beatriz.
Quería preguntarle, hablando de la violencia machista y de todos estos comportamientos del micromachismo a las agresiones, ¿cómo conectaría esta película con su ópera prima de Assistant? Gracias.
They're both sort of about behavior patterns and attitudes that are a little gendered and sort of sexist, and they're both looking at sexual harassment in the workplace, essentially, in some way. And that's kind of they're very different films. Julia Garner, my actor, clearly links the two of them, because both the films are kind of about her processing her environment and her trying to figure out if she's safe, if she can stand up for herself, how to navigate, I guess, a culture. And one was like the workplace culture in the assistant, and here is something more like an aggressive drinking culture in Australia. So there are links in that way, but they're very different, I think, tonally, the two films.
No sé si hay alguna otra pregunta. Yo quería preguntarte, uno de los puntos fuertes de la película, más allá de todo lo que señalan mis compañeras sobre todo el tema de este machismo estructural y un poco la representación de las mujeres en la película, saliendo un poco de esto, la importancia del escenario, ¿no? El cómo este espacio, o sea, cómo utilizas como el entorno de Australia, ¿no? para contar tu historia, ¿no? De alguna forma remite como a directores clave del cine australiano, ¿no? De Peter Weir a George Miller, ¿no? En la forma en la que se filma el paisaje y cómo ese paisaje condiciona a los personajes. Me gustaría saber cómo trabajaste esta parte en tu película.
I'm Australian, but I hadn't made a movie in Australia before. So partly it was the first film I've really done this. And when I was kind of heading there to do it, I was thinking about, well, how do I tell it's a very dark story about the culture, but also kind of show the beauty and show them how magnificent the landscape is. So it was about trying to find ways to present the country beautifully, but also show this sort of little kind of microcosms of behavior that I disagreed with. So it's a balancing act of finding, but firstly it's also like partly the pub is set in this mining town in the middle of nowhere, so finding that kind of barren, dusty landscape was really important. Finding a structure that was unique and had its own, like the pub itself, the two-story pub was really important. So it became about sort of assembling these elements and then also just setting up a nice trip for the girls. I wanted Sydney to look beautiful. I wanted the waterhole to look beautiful. Like we wanted to feel kind of some of that the whatever magnificence of the outback, I guess, and the Australian sort of environment.
Hay otra pregunta aquí delante.
Hola, otra vez. Yo quería preguntar sobre los diferentes personajes masculinos que se ven en el bar y sus comportamientos, cómo son ellos, cómo los escribió haciendo el guión, si son comportamientos que puso en el guión porque los ha visto en personas, en hombres, o si es un poco un compendio de la idea general que se tiene respecto a los hombres. Gracias.
It's a combination of things. I worked with a co-writer, there's two of us, and he's Oscar Redding, his name is, and he's from regional Australia. So he lends a certain voice that's a more authentic Australian voice in that way. And then it was about sort of figuring out what role each character played, who each character was, and some little bits and pieces are experiences from my own life. Some of it is things that Oscar's seen in pubs and bars. Some of it's from the documentary behaviors we've seen. And it's sort of just combining it all and then layering it out and seeing, like, structurally, what should happen here and what should happen there and how does it escalate and how does it get worse but not cross the line. And so it's like a lot of conversations about sort of, the details, the kind of minutiae of it, basically. But they're all based in some way on people we've met or people we've sort of come across, I guess.
Si no hay ninguna pregunta, aquí. Vale. Aquí una adelante y luego pasamos allá.
Congratulations for your film. Really, it was a very good film. We are going to have it also in the Asian Film Festival in Barcelona. And, we were looking forward to watching it. Pero, bueno, yo quería preguntarle sobre la presencia de los aborígenes en la película, porque me parece muy interesante el contraste, ¿no?, entre aborígenes y australianos, de alguna manera, y canadienses. Es decir, hay personajes de distintos mundos y en este sentido me parece interesante el empoderamiento de la mujer aborigen, que es a su vez la pareja o mujer o esposa del que lleva un poco ese centro, esa casa, ese bar o taberna o como sea. y la relación que se establece entre todos estos personajes, ¿no? Entre la mujer empoderada. De hecho, en toda la película hay una agresividad muy fuerte, una violencia machista, como se ha dicho aquí, y al mismo tiempo hay un empoderamiento de la mujer también muy importante. ¿Cómo puede esta mezcla, cómo ha querido o por qué ha querido que realmente se mezclaran estos tres mundos, ¿no? Estas tres culturas, en definitiva?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, mostly in adapting sort of this documentary, there was no female presence in the pub. Like there was no woman working in this pub and the thing. Well, maybe there was, but not in any strong way. And we were looking to create a character that could kind of show the world to the girls I think if a man had have picked them up from the train station, then everyone would have thought, oh, they're really going to die. So it's another way of sort of subverting, I guess, an expectation of who's going to pop out of that car. And then we cast Ursula Jovic, who's an incredible actress, and she had worked with Oscar before in a theater program. So the two of them were very close. So we wrote the role for Ursula just thinking she would be a wonderful addition. We're fans of her work. And she's so strong, and she and Hugo Weaving had a really beautiful relationship, and they spent a lot of time talking about their backstory, what had happened. We'd assumed that they had a relationship on and off that has sort of come to an end, and it was getting to the point where she was really at breaking point, where she was ready to leave. She had enough, and she stood up for herself and said, "No, I'm out," and leaves. And that to us was important, that she'd taken the first step, so that our girls could then stand up for themselves. They could see that in her, and her making her own choices. So yeah, it was just looking at different interesting characters and interesting actors we wanted to work with that we brought everyone together and took them all to Adelaide, to the outside of Adelaide, and we kind of created that world with all these people that we were excited about working with, essentially.
Aquí atrás, este chico de aquí atrás. No te preocupes.
Felicidades por la película, que me parece un ejercicio de dirección excelente, la verdad. Quería preguntar sobre cómo conecta, vemos al principio de la película el personaje de Julia Garner besándose con un chico en el barco, y quería saber también, aparte de esto, de cómo empieza el personaje, cómo conecta después con el tema central toda la relación que tiene el personaje de Julia Garner con el alcohol y todo lo que explica del pasado de su madre y demás. Muchas gracias.
Yeah, I mean, Julia and I have worked together forever, so we have a very lovely relationship. We've done 2 movies, but we feel like we've known each other forever. And she brought a lot to the character, I think brought a lot to the journey of the character. But we wanted to make sure that she basically, when she arrives at that pub, she almost doesn't want to be there. Immediately, she's like, I don't want to be there. So we needed to make sure in the opening scenes that she could have fun. Like, you could see that she could have fun and relax. If she felt safe, she can enjoy herself. So part of that was sort of setting up who she was when she wasn't in a place that she was afraid of or fearful of. So it's kind of sort of building out a character in a way where we see a little bit of her party side, we see a bit of her taking control. But I feel like these sort of friendships, often when you travel at that age, when you're young, it's a sort of a natural dynamic where if one person sort of has to take charge of the money, of what time you're going to go home, and the other person can drink a little and be a little silly and have a bit of fun. And I think they sort of fell into that dynamic, and Julia's character is left trying to be the responsible one. And so, yeah, that seemed to me like something like when I've been traveling in my past, that was often like, I've been both sides of that coin, depending on who I'm traveling with. I think it just sort of naturally finds itself, that balance. So, yeah. And Julia just brought so much. Her face is so beautifully expressive. She's got those big eyes. It's just the camera loves her face. So it's just lovely to shoot her. I have such a good time with her on the set. We're able to do a lot. And she does a lot with very little. She sort of can move a little bit and it conveys so much. So it's a really incredible gift.
Sí, bueno, pues voy a aprovechar este nuevo turno de pregunta para abusar un poco más todavía y hacer 2 preguntas. Yo quería preguntar sobre, bueno, Hugo Weaving, que creo que es uno de los actores más camaleónicos que hay en la actualidad. ¿Cómo fue trabajar con él? Porque vemos que una vez más se transforma mucho en su papel. Y después quería preguntar también, no sé si tiene algún proyecto nuevo entre manos, y si es así, si también va relacionado un poco sobre personajes femeninos, si va a ahondar más sobre los personajes femeninos. Gracias.
Yes, Hugo Weaving is a legend, and we love him, and he was such a kind presence. We wanted somebody who not only was a great actor, but who was a nice human being, who could be kind of the captain of our ship, essentially, and like run our set, and who kind of everyone respected. And he brought a real, like a professionalism and a class to everything we did, which was wonderful. And he is so professional and so detailed, and is really in the weeds with everything and writes some beautiful notes. And so he and Ursula and I did a lot of rehearsals for the two of them together. He works in a very specific way, and it was a real treat for me to watch him work and see what he does. And it was always surprising, and it was always incredible. He's just sort of, you can ask him to do anything and he'll just blow you away. So it was very exciting. And then I don't know what's next. I've got ideas, and I've been too busy throwing this film into the world to really be able to get them on paper. But I'm getting closer to figuring out what's what. And I'd love to Julia and I want to keep working together. We want to find a third one to work on. So there's a few things I'm juggling, but yeah, hopefully, I'm definitely going to tell stories about women. I feel like that's naturally what I do because I'm a woman, so that makes sense. So yeah, I'll keep doing it if they let me. I've got to get people to give me some money to do it, essentially.
Aquí hay otra pregunta.
Hi again. Are there any backpacking stories of your own that inspired some of the script? Did you ever go backpacking?
I did so much backpacking, and especially through Europe and all around, and I did a lot of, and so I've done a lot of that, and I feel like, but a lot of it, I don't know, it's a weird one. Some of it's in there and some of it's new. It's a mix. Once you get to the end of the script, you no longer know what's you and what's someone else. You know what I mean? It all blends together in a way, so it's hard to distinguish. But definitely, I've done my fair share of drinking in weird bars in the weird places. But yeah.
Yo quería hacer una pregunta un poco poniendo en contraposición las dos películas de ficción tuyas, de Assistant y ahora de Royal Hotel. Todo lo que en la primera película estaba fuera de campo, ¿no? Se insinuaba, todo estaba, no podíamos ver cómo explotaba la violencia, solo lo intuíamos, y en cambio en esta es todo lo contrario, ¿no? Esta violencia asistimos a ella desde el minuto 1 en todas sus variantes, ¿no? De todas las maneras posibles. Quería saber que nos hablaras un poco de este cambio y qué ha sido más difícil para ti, el contar toda esta violencia estructural y todo este machismo desde el fuera de campo, como lo que queda fuera y no podemos ver, o hacerlo como en esta película, ¿no? Desde el primer plano y expresando pues, la violencia a la que estamos sometidas las mujeres de una forma sistemática, ¿no? Y me gustaría saber un poco sobre ese proceso ya desde la fase de escritura de tus películas.
Yeah, but I think both movies don't. It's not like this one is overtly violent. Like a lot of it exists in these kind of jokes. You know, people are making bad jokes, and every joke feels a little threatening. You know, but there's no. What we're still doing is a similar thing, which is sort of exploring kind of how the discomfort of being a woman, essentially, in any space, but especially spaces that are particularly volatile, I guess. So I guess it was a shift, but the shift isn't that big. It's sort of I'm still doing similar things. It's more tense. It's a little more overt. It's sitting on the surface a little more, but there's still a lot more that it's all about the potential of what could happen, you know, versus what happens. It's about, this could get bad, this could get messy, but it isn't messy yet, but I'm not sure. It seems it's heading that way. It's sort of the unease of all that. So in some ways that they're both looking at sort of systemic, kind of more broader cultural problems, you know, but just in slightly different ways, yeah.
Thank you.
Kaixo, bueno, he llegado un poquito tarde, no sé si se habrá respondido a esta pregunta, tampoco quiero hacer spoilers, pero me gustaría hablar del final de la película y ese mensaje tan rotundo que das, que es quemarlo todo. No sé si te parece que es la manera de terminar con esa violencia machista o hay otras maneras posibles.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much I'm supposed to spoil the ending, but I don't know. I think the ending's making people, especially a few male viewers, pretty mad, and I don't know. We kind of like it. It's a little cheeky. It's a little provocative. We knew in doing it that we'd get in a bit of trouble, but it was something where basically I didn't want to let them leave that place and not have the film not really take a stand on the behavior. I wanted to make sure that as a filmmaker, I was saying, no, like that's not okay. Even though the behavior's on the line and it's not that violent and no one gets assaulted, it's like, no, that sort of behavior needs to stop and we shouldn't have to put up with that. So to me, it was a real message. I mean, like a very, very clear message that I wanted to convey in the final act of the movie. And I think with The Assistant, my last film, it has a very bleak ending and it was a very sad ending and it was a kind of a dark movie to walk out of. And so it's nice to kind of give this one a little like, provocative little last step, basically. It's a very quick little thing, but yeah, we're proud of it.
Hay otra pregunta aquí atrás.
I'll ask the question in English and then I'll translate. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about the one minor woman character at the bar and what point she came into it, and if you see if, for example, she is bought into a machista culture, and if you have given any thought to what roles you may give to older women in your future movies. Bueno, solamente mi pregunta es sobre la única mujer que hay en el bar, si ella asume una cultura machista también y si para un futuro proyecto piensa tener algunas mujeres de mayor edad en las películas, que piensa en cuanto a ese punto que se comentó en la mesa de ayer. Gracias.
I think when I was watching this documentary originally, as an Australian woman, I thought, oh, if I was out in that place, I probably would be more accepting of the culture than these Scandinavians were. I'd probably go, oh yeah, it's okay, mate, like it's just a joke, I get it. And I think Australian women often just go with it and accept it and accept the badness. And I thought what was interesting about foreigners in that context was that they were willing to say no and willing to stand up for themselves. So the Australian woman at the bar represents kind of the people that are keeping that culture, well, not alive, but they're sort of essentially going with it in that way. And we cast a woman who was just fabulous and just would yell things out and had a great time. And we're still close. We still message each other, and she's always telling me what a great time she had. So I'm glad and all the guys had a good time with her too. She was fun. But we did want someone that represented, that's not just men that are keeping this culture, like perpetuating it. It's also the women that are contributing to it. And she says some strange things to the girls at times, like, lean over a little bit when you serve them and things like that are kind of, it makes Julia's character feel uncomfortable, but she's not sure how to address it, that sort of thing. So yeah, she was a joy to work with, a lot of fun. And I'd love to work with other women. I've got the next project, I'm trying to expand it. It's sort of each time, I make these little movies and people give me a little bit of money and I can only kind of do so much. And this one I was given a bigger cast and a bigger, space to play, but we still only had 25 days. It was a short shoot. It's for a lot of people and a lot of cast. And so it's like working, hopefully if they give me bigger budgets, I can really kind of expand and create bigger worlds and things like that. So, yeah.
No sé si hay alguna otra pregunta. Antes, a propósito de una pregunta, decías que tú no tenías la percepción de que tu película conectara de alguna forma con el cine de terror, pero sí que es verdad que viendo tanto The Assistant como viendo The Royal Hotel, hay una serie de cosas en las dos películas relacionadas con la forma de trabajar la tensión, de trabajar la violencia, ya sea expresa o no, que de alguna forma conecta mucho con el cine de género, ya sea de terror o sea thriller. Entonces quería preguntarte un poco si tienes alguna tentación de hacer alguna película de terror, por ejemplo, que es algo que hemos hablado bastante también con los compañeros, porque en tus películas siempre hay algo que parece deslizarse hacia allí, aunque luego están totalmente ancladas a lo real y no son películas de género puras, pero sí que parece que hay ahí como algún flirteo con el terror. Solo quería preguntar eso.
I mean, I think I just explore things that I find interesting. I look at behavior that I find interesting, and that generally in life, and that's generally sparks the idea for a film. And so then it sort of becomes about, well, what am I? This is hard to kind of put into words, but if I'm given this sort of platform and I'm able to show people to make a movie and to show aspects of our culture to others to see, I think I've kind of got a duty to examine the parts of that culture that often doesn't get seen or addressed. And so this idea that these small things, they call them microaggressions, but these little moments that can really affect somebody's self-confidence, somebody's self-worth, that can make them feel terrified, if I can highlight those kind of moments and show how in general behavior kind of affects people and how we can kind of maybe rectify things or change things in small ways, then hopefully I'm contributing in some way to making, whatever, to doing what I can politically with my cinema. But yeah, I think, I'm not sure. It's I don't know if I want to make a horror movie. I'm just sort of interested in what I'm interested in, and it's a gut thing more than anything. And then I think the genre comes second. Like I kind of work out what I'm trying to explore and then figure out where to fit it within genres. But often when there's genres, there's a lot of expectations, again, that we're trying to correct here and change up. And so, I'm trying to work against, I guess, a history of cinema that has been kind of violent towards women and doesn't often treat its female heroes well, I guess.
No sé si hay alguna otra pregunta. Aquí delante hay otra.
Hola, pues yo quería saber si en Australia existe alguna ley que vaya en contra de los comportamientos contra la mujer y contra la violencia machista, como si existe, por ejemplo, aquí en España. Gracias.
Yes, definitely. But again, when you look at the film, if you actually examine the behavior in it, nothing has happened that has broken a law, So it's all about these things that are sitting in that space where it's like, I'm not sure if this doesn't. It's technically not a crime to do anything in the film. And whatever, she's hit in the face, but that's an accidental hit. So none of it crosses that line in that way. So it's looking at how to talk about the type of behavior that isn't criminal, but is very unsettling and can lead to criminal behavior if it's not prevented or stopped early on.
No sé si hay alguna otra pregunta. Si no hay ninguna otra pregunta, un poco para cerrar, puesto que por circunstancias que han pasado este año no podemos contar con la presencia de las dos actrices principales de la película, sí quería preguntarte un poco sobre el trabajo con ellas, no solo sobre el trabajo con ellas como actrices, sino también en relación a la escritura de los dos personajes, porque aunque son dos personajes que un poco van en la misma dirección en la película, son muy distintos, ¿no? Y hay un conflicto entre ellas en muchas cosas, en muchas maneras de ver las cosas, ¿no? Entonces quería preguntarte por las dos cosas. Primero, por la escritura de estos dos personajes femeninos principales y, por otro lado, por cómo ha sido trabajar con Julia Garner y con Jessica Henwick.
Yeah, I mean, I think it started off there's a few different ways of looking at it, but one is looking at the way women deal with sort of past trauma or things like that. Is this one way you can kind of drink yourself through it, to keep drinking, not think about it, have a good time, not worry about it. And the other way is sort of to be very overtly cautious and very, and always examine the environment for threats or whatever. So we had these kind of two narratives essentially, and Julia took one, and then we had to cast. And Julia I was going to work with no matter what, because we'd worked together before. And we were looking to cast Jessica. We needed to find someone that worked well, who had good chemistry with Julia. So I went about it casting not just a brilliant actor, but someone who I felt like could get along with us and would fit naturally into our group and turn our little duo into a trio. And we found Jessica, whose work was she's very serious in what she does. She's very precise. And I was a bit worried she'd be too precise because Liv, the character, is very messy. And so we had to I met her on Zoom and she was really completely like goofy and weird and sweet and kind and bubbly and everything we needed her to be. So immediately, I think within a few minutes on Zoom, we decided she'd be the right person for the role. And her and Julia got along really beautifully. I knew they would. I could kind of tell by the way Jessica works. And Julia was really relieved that she had someone that she could work opposite with, that she trusted and that felt like a friend. And it's chemistry things, like energetically they just fit. It's hard to put into words why, but yeah.
Thank you. Pues si no hay ninguna otra pregunta, vamos a dar por acabada esta rueda de prensa de The Royal Hotel, una de las películas de la sección oficial. Muchísimas gracias a Kitty Green por su tiempo y su atención y muchas gracias a vosotros.